You've just started, and you really want to make a good impression. But everyone's talking in a different language. You understand like 5% of it maybe. Every moment in confusion is time that you're not doing the actual job. And now you're falling impossibly behind. I've been there. I spent nearly 20 years at Amazon as a principal engineer, and people couldn't believe how fast I could get up to speed, even in domains where I had little to no experience. A lot of my job was to parachute in on teams with big problems and make an impact immediately. And I did. These teams were filled with really smart software engineers that knew how their stuff worked, so I couldn't just BS my way through it. In this video, I'll reveal my system for getting up to speed on anything incredibly fast. This was the most important skill I developed in my career, and something that, if you can pick up early in yours, will catapult you past your peers. At least you'll go farther and faster than I did. Before we dive in, if this is helpful and you want more from me, hit that like button and subscribe. It lets me know that I'm on the right track. So, what happens when you're the new guy? You ask for documents, there's a mountain to read, and all of it's outdated. The stuff you need isn't even written down, or if it is, you already have to know the material to know how to filter the noise out. So you meet with the experts. You get 30 minutes of information avalanche. You both want to let them keep talking, but you also want to interrupt them with questions because you've missed some stuff. Of course, they have a hard stop, so your notes are incomplete. They're a mess of acronyms and fragments that made sense when you wrote them, so you're back to answering the questions yourself. But every question you answer spawns 2 more. It's like the more you learn, the more behind you feel. But here's what changed everything for me. Don't treat all knowledge the same way. Depending on what type it is, you want to do different things with it. In my system, there are 4 buckets, and understanding this will transform how quickly you get up to speed. The first bucket is for factual knowledge. This represents the what. What's the name of the team and who does it consist of? What does the feature do? The second bucket is process or procedural knowledge. This is the how. These are the things like standard operating procedures, SOPs, the current build and deployment process, or the monthly accounting procedure. The third bucket is conceptual knowledge. Concepts are just a fancy word for ideas and how those ideas relate to other ideas. The fourth bucket is questions. Yes, questions themselves are a bucket of knowledge because they have built-in assumptions of what you do and don't know. Humans are funny animals. When we don't know something, we think it's super difficult. When we finally learn that thing, we think it's trivial, and we forget how hard it was when we didn't know it. So here's my system. In your notes, create 4 headings. One for facts, procedure, concepts, and questions. Whenever you're exposed to new information, instead of writing it down in your notes immediately as you hear it, categorize it into these buckets. If you don't know which bucket it goes into, stick it in the questions bucket. I'm going to go into a deep dive into how to treat each bucket to maximize learning, but if you simply structure your notes like this, you'll drastically accelerate the speed of your onboarding. Our brains are terrible at organizing things and applying structure post hoc. And just like categorizing knowledge can accelerate your learning, the right tools can drastically reduce the time it takes to get up to speed on projects. That's why I want to talk to you about Linear, our video sponsor. Linear is a modern issue tracking and project management tool that aligns perfectly with what we've been discussing. It helps you focus on what matters without getting lost in the noise. I can speak to this directly. After years at Amazon wrestling with complex enterprise tools, I used Linear to plan and track the creation of this very video. Instead of drowning in configurations, Linear's thoughtful design let me get up to speed immediately. I set up my workflow, defined milestones, and linked my brief in minutes, not hours. What makes Linear different is that they respect you as a user and seek to minimize cognitive overhead, not add to it. When tracking work in Jira or Amazon's internal tools, I'd spend too much mental energy navigating the tool itself to do the simplest of things, like know what's assigned to me and how to set the status. If you believe your project management tool should fade into the background, join companies like OpenAI and Brex, who have switched for precisely this reason. The folks at Linear have generously offered to take $250 off any of their plans for my viewers by using the link in the description. Thanks again to Linear for sponsoring today's video. Let's talk about each of the buckets, starting with bucket number 1, the facts. There are 2 types of facts, the ones that you need in your working memory, and reference facts, the stuff you can look up later. Working memory are things like the name and core purpose of the team, what everything's named, and who the major stakeholders are. Reference facts are things like the meaning of specific error codes and the credentials for shared accounts. For the facts parts of your notes, you want to create 2 sections, one for your working memory that you need to access quickly, and one for reference facts. If you don't know where it goes, then put it in the reference facts bucket because we want to default to looking things up when we need them. Doesn't make sense to memorize the dictionary. Only when you notice that things pop up multiple times should it be elevated to the working knowledge bucket. This way, you don't end up spending time on things that you can just look up later. Review the working knowledge section every day until you've committed it to memory. If there's a lot of critical knowledge that you need to get right the first time, think about using a note card program like Anki to really accelerate your memorization. Let's talk about bucket number 2, procedural knowledge. This is the how stuff gets done bucket. You know something's procedural when there are steps that need to be done in order. You can put the necessary details in this section, along with links to SOPs, playbooks, and write-ups. But it's critical not to review this knowledge like you would the working memory bucket. The fastest way to get up to speed with procedural knowledge is to not review it passively or even use flashcards. Instead, what you want to do is execute the procedure as quickly as possible. At Amazon, software developers not only write code, but they're also responsible for fixing things if that code doesn't work perfectly. This is called being on call. Most teams have extensive on-call documentation like SOPs and playbooks for common issues that crop up. But most new people shy away from getting on the on-call rotation because they don't feel ready. But they could make a really big impact on the team if they join the rotation earlier because people are taken out of development work when they go on call. Also, people are universally happy when they are on call less. Passively reading SOPs waiting to be ready is a trap. In situations where there's extensive procedural documentation, it's best to volunteer to run through the steps of the procedure with supervision. That's the fastest way to learn it. If someone said, "Hey Steve, I'd like to shadow the on-call with you. Better yet, maybe you can be the secondary on-call and I'll page you if I can't handle it on my own," then I would say, heck yeah, you're a legend. You've only been on the team 2 weeks. If you're the new person on the team and there's a documented process that would help the team out if you learned it, ask someone if you can be present as they run through it, or better yet, ask them if you can drive while they watch. It's amazing to see how people that are difficult to schedule time with suddenly have availability to teach you how to do things. Let's talk about bucket 3, conceptual knowledge. Think of this section as your mental whiteboard. You know how most offices have whiteboards everywhere? There's a reason for that. They're for mapping out how things connect. In this section of your notes, you want to keep a boxes and arrows diagram of how everything fits together. Use tools like Excalidraw or even just pen and paper. Draw the main components as boxes, then draw arrows showing how they connect. Label those connections sends data to, depends on, triggers, whatever makes sense. If you have more than 12 boxes, you're not thinking conceptually. You're drowning in details. Group things together into more abstract boxes. A good conceptual model is simple. It captures the essence, not every implementation detail. This is my biggest trick and why people were always impressed with how fast I got up to speed. All ordering systems are the same at a conceptual level. All search systems are the same. All payment systems, streaming video platforms, scaled microservices, they're all conceptually identical. The details are always different. The patterns, shockingly consistent. When I moved around teams within Amazon, I wasn't starting from scratch each time. I was applying the same conceptual patterns. Catalog systems, ingest data from partners, clean records, match and merge. Payment systems, validate, authorize, fulfill, handle failures. Once you see the pattern, you just need to learn the local names for things. Here's a tip. When you get FaceTime with an expert, draw them your conceptual model. Say, here's my understanding of all of the concepts. Keep it at a high level. Remember the 12 boxes max. Then hand them the pen. They'll immediately spot what's wrong and what's missing. This will drastically accelerate your understanding because experts love correcting diagrams, not creating them from scratch. They'll grab the pen and start drawing, and that's when your real learning happens. But because you kept it conceptual, you won't get lost in the details. They'll correct your understanding of how things fundamentally work. I always try to speedrun getting to this conceptual understanding. While other people are memorizing things that you can look up, I'm figuring out what the 5 core components are and how they all relate to each other. This is how you get up to speed in hours instead of weeks. Let's talk about bucket 4, questions. Here's the key rule for the questions bucket. Never delete questions from the list. You can mark them as answered, but you have to keep them around. Why? Because your questions create a breadcrumb trail of your understanding. When you started, you asked really basic questions like, what does this API do? A week later, you're asking, how does our API handle rate limiting during Black Friday? As you accumulate answered questions, patterns will start to emerge. Keep adding questions and moving the answers to the appropriate buckets. This creates a running thread of how you gained your understanding. When someone new joins after you, you can just walk them through your questions list. They'll thank you forever. If you need to write a document or do a presentation, starting with the questions is the best way to frame your document. So here's the moment you're working towards. When you ask a question and the domain experts say, Steve, that's a great question. We're actually trying to figure that out for ourselves. Congratulations, you're no longer the new guy. You're now at the frontier of what the team knows. It doesn't take as long as you think to get there if you use my system. Why? Most people are winging it. They know their slice really well, but the total knowledge space is so vast that everyone operates with partial information. This system will get you to their level faster than you can imagine. If you enjoyed this video, none of this matters unless you have time to actually do stuff. Check out my video on how I have time for everything. I made it when I still had a full-time job as a principal engineer, my YouTube channel, and 2 new kids.